Welcome back to the channel, friends and family. My name is Gary, and I am the Card Father, and I'm glad to see you here. Thanks for coming by. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe down below. Hit that notification bell when we go live here and get all really good, juicy details about joining up with the Card Father. Tell the algorithm that you like what I'm doing, and people should watch more of it. But hey, today let's talk about some more value-added things in the marketplace.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
I want to talk about Pokemon card investing. Yeah, I am not going to be the #1 person that you should probably listen to when it comes to Pokemon investing. My collection's very small and very unique. But when it does come to Pokemon card investing, it's an important process to understand. And I want to give you some best advice from what I've learned so far, what I've actually been a part of, what I do, and how I help people kind of maneuver and navigate through the Pokemon card trading industry. So let's just jump right into this. Pokemon card investing is like herding cats. Okay, it's not 100% a science. It's also not 100% an art. It's also something that's extremely elusive. You will go back and forth all over the place with it. So if you're not like at least somewhat familiar with the market and how cyclical it can be, you're probably going to drive yourself crazy. And then I would recommend you don't do it. Okay, if you freak out so easily over fluctuations in the market and you're just like, well, I just bought this booster box for $100 and now it's $90. That happens. I mean, it's just one of those things. So if you freak out over fluctuations in the market because of the way things are moving back and forth, then you probably shouldn't do this. You can't hold your temptation back from opening sealed product if you're collecting sealed product, or flipping that said product, whether it be singles graded or sealed. If you can't do those things, like if you can't hold back the temptation and kind of put your timing in the right spot, then you're definitely not going to want to do this. There's a difference between holding a collection long enough to resell it or to give it value and then resell it out, versus there's a difference in taking a collection, your sealed collection, and buying it immediately and within 3 months expecting it to be flippable, right? There's that kind of level of understanding. So you have to be very, very cognizant that there's a time here. I would also say that if you're getting into Pokemon specifically and you don't know anything about the TCG, this is not for you. The reason I say that is because it takes time to develop knowledge over a good period, a frame rate, a good time frame of what this thing is. Like, there is so much meta information about Pokemon and TCGs in general that you kind of need to know, because that really is what helps determine the factor of the market between playability of certain cards, cracking packs, knowing the value of those packs, what the resale value of them could be potentially versus what the actual sealed value is. And I'll go into an example here. 151, for example, when it released last fall, everybody already knew that set was going to be on fire, right? But everybody and their mother was actually trying to wholesale out everything. Why? Because they bought into a set, they knew it was liquid, and so when they bought it in liquid, they were trying to recoup their costs quickly, so they were fire selling everything. So you could go on TikTok Shop right around the Christmas time, you could see the UPCs, they were down to $100, some of them were $87. Wholesale, I was getting those in at 70, 76. So it was a little different because I'm trying to sell it at MSRP of 120, because you'd have some person go to Target or Walmart and buy them for $120, but yet they would expect me to sell it for below 100 at the TikTok Shop rate, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
So again, if you have no idea about the market, whether it's playable or how it's the meta works, you probably shouldn't be investing in this. Let me kind of give you a better idea. If you have any squeamishness about holding product, selling product, or keeping product sealed, whether it be singles graded or the sealed product itself, then you might want to try something a little less challenging like Bitcoin, or maybe Tesla or Apple stock. I don't recommend getting into sealed graded or singles collecting and investing with Pokemon. It's not easy. It's a major challenge, and if you are squeamish, probably shouldn't do it.
Challenge accepted.
All right, let me give you some quick advice that I see as being quick wins for for you in the long term and in the short term when it comes to collecting and then keeping things for your investments. First and foremost, you kind of have to play all three fields. You have to play the singles game, the sealed game, and the graded game. If you watch my other video about graded Pokemon cards, I'm not a fan of grading Pokemon cards just because I think the time value is out there. Like, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of space. But I do believe in graded cards, so I'll buy graded cards in and I'll sell graded cards out. I don't want to grade them myself. But in that regard, you kind of have to play the game here, right? So when it comes to singles, card values on singles take a little bit of time. Now, you'll see what I like to call the initial hit, okay? So this is like the initial high. Set releases, say Stellar Crown, for example, card values are out of like control. They're all over the place. They'll start extremely high, but then day one and within the first 24 hours, cards fall between 25 to 60% in their value instantly overnight. Within the first 24 hours, I would say sometimes in the first 12 hours they go. Stellar Crown was probably one of the exceptions, and so was 151, because those cards values didn't tank so quickly. You look at like the Bulbasaur, right, or the Squirtle card. It started off right around that $48 marker, and it's probably sitting at like 41. So, and we've been a couple weeks out since Stellar Crown released, and there is value being held. Now, your real trick here with singles is when you buy a single in and you want to keep it, contained for a little bit of time before it matures. You're looking at least 3 to 5 years, okay? And that's the same case with sealed, and we'll get that in a second, but you're looking at 3 to 5 years, and there's two reasons why. First of all, modern cards are very volatile within their first year of being available. After the first year, the market kind of settles on them, unless there's like some weird like fluke thing, like a massive reprint happens, or maybe the cards become stupid and desirable, like Crown Zenith and alt arts from like Evolving Skies and all that happened this summer. So I usually say about that 3-year marker is when most modern cards start to settle in the market. If you look at vintage cards, for example, vintage cards are all over the place, right, when it comes to being accessible, but they're already solidified. They're not being reprinted. There's not going to be a massive dump somewhere coming into play, right? Somebody's not going to crack a bunch of, millions of cards and then dump them into the market. So your vintage cards will have more of a steady, consistent, stable market value, where your other cards, such as modern cards, I would say anything that's like mostly modern within the last 2 to 3 years. So Sword and Shield is included in that because it's still pretty young. Like Crown Zenith cards are still pretty young on the dock, that they're not going to mature enough to not be at least interfered with in that volatile change for modern. But definitely super modern stuff, like the most Scarlet and Violet era stuff, that is a little bit difficult because you're seeing cards come up at a high price at initial release and then they tank super fast. And that's a challenge because you got to be the first one to it. You got to be the first one to sell. And what you'll see is people undercut on TCG Player. They just undercut. So a card that could start out at $100, somebody's going to list it at 99, and the next person's going to list it at 95, then 90, and then 80, and then 89. And then as all those cards get dumped on the market, you went from having maybe 12 listings at the beginning to having over 150 listings by the end of 12 hours. And that's part of the issue. So you have to play it smart. You have to think about the cards that you're buying, the cards that you're looking to retain for the market value in order to keep that market value sustainable, right? Generally, you can find these cards in almost any condition. So whether you want a binder copy or you want a copy to set up and display, you can find them in there. Storage on these cards is really easy because cards are super thin, so you can put them in a binder. Binders are like books. You can put books on a shelf, so it's really simple. And they're, in my opinion, they're nicer to look at than sealed. But if you are a sealed collector, there are some couple of things that I want you to look at as well. You're looking at a marginal increase on your sealed product collection. If it's not a hit product, 5 years minimum. 5 years minimum, and that's post reprint. Okay, so if we look at something like Evolving Skies, for example, where they reprinted it 3 times, possibly 4, a Crown Zenith where they reprinted it at least 2 times, you're looking at a massive change in the market for sealed product. Scarlet and Violet 151 is the exception here. There hasn't been a reprint. We've seen tricklings coming out in big box stores, but we have not seen a reprint of it yet. Now, you have seen that in the Pokemon 151, which is the Japanese version. They've reprinted that thing 4 times. And that's crazy because you've seen every single time that market has gone up, 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 up. And at one point they were like $176 a box. And then they tanked down to $45, $50 unsealed. And then they climbed right back up to $117 after the second, third reprint. And then the fourth reprint hits and the boxes tank right back down to $75, $65. So you have to consider sealed product is the exception to the rule, right? Is the fact that you need to wait 5 years minimum before something is extremely valuable. I think with Pokemon 151, the Japanese version, there's a massive exception because it's so popular that it will increase in value quickly after its first reprint or second, third, fourth reprints. I think it does increase fairly quickly. But Scarlet and Violet 151, we haven't seen a reprint, and there's not rumors of a reprint yet. Going through, like, my distributor's not said anything. I've not heard anything from colleagues, and there's nothing there. And it's potential that there will be a reprint, and if it does, then you'll see cards fall. But I think just like in the Japanese sets, Scarlet and Violet will increase again. It'll go back up. So to me, Scarlet and Violet is probably more indicative of like a Cosmic Eclipse set at the moment. I would not call it the Evolving Skies of Scarlet and Violet. That set has not been released yet. Twilight Masquerade's pretty close. I think Twilight Masquerade is more so the I would say it's the Crown Zenith right now. It's really close. Anyway, so it's harder to store. So remember, when you collect this stuff and you decide to put it away for retention and investment, it's harder to store. Lots of people put them in tubs. Some people put them in their closets for years on end. Collectors, when you do this, you have way more to worry about in conditions, right? With cards, it's pretty easy to condition a card, but with sealed product, it's a little bit more difficult. You have to worry about tears in the plastic. You have to worry about damage done to the box. You have to worry about whether the pack is actually sitting in the plastic correctly or if it's tilted over and falling out of the package. There's a lot more to worry about between breaks and damage and packaging issues. So you have to be very particular. They make acrylic cases for booster boxes, right? So you can keep them sealed. They also do the same thing for ETBs. Other sealed product, I've seen people actually go to the full extent of putting them in a separate bag. That would work. So you have to be very careful with that. Now, I will tell you that sealed product values do not hold at quite as strong as singles do over the long term, okay? So they do increase after that 5-year marker, but not at the highest marginal rate. So you have to be very cognizant of what you're buying and when you're buying it. I would recommend that now is the time that if you're going to buy anything Evolving Skies, buy it, sit on it, don't touch it. We're already past the point where you should have bought it super cheap. So you might as well, if you're going to pay full price for it, pay full price and don't touch it, because in the next 5 years, that set will triple its value. That's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. I would say 151 is probably one of the sets that you're really going to want to jump onto. I would say that 151, the Scarlet and Violet version, will only double in value. Now, if you look at like the Zapdos EX boxes, those things went from being $25 a box to being $40 to $45 a box. ETBs, just the regular ones, not the Poke Center ones, not the Pokemon Center ones, they are now sitting at what was $55. They're now sitting at $85 a box. Okay, guys, like that is insanity. All right, that's stupid insane. That's over a 50% increase. So that would be another set I would invest in. Twilight Masquerade would be one. Paradox Rift would be another one. I would definitely invest in Surging Sparks. That's another one as well. So be on the lookout there. Okay, now let's talk graded real quick while we have a few moments here. You already know my opinion on the waste of time. I think if you're not grading cards, that's okay. But if you're grading cards and you're expecting 10s and you're getting 9s, you got a problem. You got a big issue, because a lot of 9 cards do not fall in that value. If you look at graded cards, a PSA 10 is really the gold standard here, okay? Unless you get a Beckett Black Label, which is hardly possible to do with a lot of cards, especially Scarlet Violet, because the print quality is a little off. You're looking at wasting your time. You're looking at wasting your money if you don't get a 10, okay? You could take any card, and if it's a 10, you're going to get that super hit high value. But if you get a 9, you're looking at least 60 to 70, maybe even 80% value drop. At that point in time, anything below a 9, you're really looking at just raw value of the card most times. Unless it's a super desirable card, like a Moonbreon, for example, from Evolving Skies. That's a little bit different. So you have to play that field really smartly with what cards you're grading. I've seen people grade cards all over the place and have done a really good job with getting like a Charizards in, or getting Squirtles or War Turtles, or Blastoise or whatever, the main common ones, getting those out and getting them in at a 10, because they grade out a 10 really, really easily. So you have to be very, very like strategic with what you're doing on the grading. But in general, if you're looking at anything vintage, right, anything graded a 7 or higher is better. If you get anything below a 7, you're really pressing the gambit there. Now, Charizard from base set, Shadowless, those are a little bit different. There's some outliers, there's some fringe ones out there. That would be anything Shadowless, you're probably going to be okay with anything lower than a 7. But at that point, you're looking at damage and you're looking at condition issues and like centering. So be very aware of that. I would also say, if you're going to buy cards for resale value later, you do not grade with like some off-branded company that could go under at any minute. Okay, PSA is your king. PSA value is the only one you should grade with. So PSA, and then you can go Beckett, and then you can go CGC. CGC gives 10s out like they're freaking candy. Beckett, really more conditionally difficult. Their customer service is awful. PSA, they're a little bit... I have problems with PSA, but if you're going to grade, they're the king of value, so grade PSA. Stick with the PSA. And quite frankly, grading your cards does offer better protection on the card, so it's going to last a lot longer. But you have to be careful, because graded card values don't settle for at least 3 years, okay? So it takes about 3 years for those cards to stop riding the wave and kind of just grade out properly, and then they start to settle down real nicely, especially if you have 10s. So keep that at value, okay? I will say this. If you get a card, just remember that grading cards can be expensive, all right? And you're really putting yourself at risk if you grade a card and it comes back lower than your expectations, okay? So be aware of that, all right? Be aware of that. Don't set your expectations so high that you're like, oh, this is going to be great, because there's always an opportunity for you to crack it and regrade it if you so wish. But then you're spending more money to do so. All right, that's just me. Okay, so here's what I would recommend for short-term versus long-term gains. Okay, short-term to long-term compared to long-term. It takes between 1 and 5 years for anything to gain an extreme amount of value. I would say, again, you're looking at least 3 years you're looking at least 1 year on singles, just for the market to stabilize it just enough to begin to settle it down. You're looking at least 5 years on sealed product. I say that this is something that you have to learn how to do. You have to learn to ride the purple dragon here, okay? Yes, you have to learn to ride the purple Charizard, okay?
What?
Like, ride that purple Charizard, because time is only the real tester here. Time is the only thing that can provide a significant amount of resale market value on a collection or on an investment. It's really only time. Sets will increase and sets will fall. So depending on what cards are coming out, what cards are not, depends on that. Like a Twilight Masquerade, for example. Twilight Masquerade is probably one of the biggest outliers here that have really changed the game, because that's when Scarlet and Violet really took a turn for the better, right? People started seeing Scarlet and Violet era as junk, and they started seeing it as really worth something. There's a lot of great playable cards in that set. And the Greninja EX, that's the chase card out of Twilight Masquerade. So you really have to like focus down on time, right? So we've seen that box go from a $100 box to now $145 a box, which is phenomenal, because they're starting to come back up to what MSRP should be on a booster box, and it's done it. Honestly, it's done it in less than 9 months, which is incredible to think about. So time is really the tester. Sets will rise and fall. Just make sure you're comparing, those out. And then, of course, the market is really what determines the price, okay? Here's the formula I want you to remember. Market equals supply plus demand plus time. Yes, time is a factor here. And actually, you could put time squared, okay? Because there's a whole nother facet to time that you have to worry about. But the market is what determines the price, okay? I don't set prices of product based off of MSRP, because that's a falsity. I'm not a big box store. You're not coming to buy from me as a big box store. You're coming to buy from me as the card father. But when you set out the market value of a card, the market is really what determines it, because it is supply, how much is out there, demand, how many people really want that card, and the time factor. So if you give a card enough time, or you give a sealed product enough time, okay, supply becomes shortened, demand becomes increased, and time is really what puts that market value into play. All right, those are my tips and tricks and advice and things that I'm going to give you on sealed marketing versus singles versus going into graded cards for Pokemon investing. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, that's okay. Get started. But if you have like so many ifs and ands about this thing, maybe you should look at investing in something like, I don't know, tree planting. You know, just a thought. All right. Thanks for joining me tonight. Appreciate it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe down below. And as always, you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. All right. Keep on training, friends. Have a good one.